What you're about to hear are thought to be the sounds and vocalizations of a California Bigfoot. I'd been warned that it might happen, but a chill surged through me as one of my friends whispered, "That's him. They're with us." Within moments, there were other sounds, huge sounds, coming from the same direction. There were sounds I'd never heard before, and my knees began to tremble involuntarily. It was a gibberish, a chattering, strange and eerie, almost like an oddly distorted human tongue. Nearly a half hour passed, and the vocal exchange continued. Then there was an angry display. It came on suddenly and started my knees trembling again. Was the thing about to rush down and attack? Here's how it sounded. Listen now to a living legend as it was recorded during these moments. One of my companions began calling out, softly but in a firm voice, "Here, Biggie, come on in. Come on, big fella, let's be friends."
From the historic haunted heartland of Omaha, Nebraska, my name is Brian Corey, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this episode of Necronomicast. No need to adjust your audio. What you just heard in the episode intro is what is known in the world of cryptozoology as the Sierra Sounds, the famous tape recordings of real Bigfoot communications from the early 70s by my next guest, the legendary RON Morehead. RON is widely regarded as one of the preeminent Bigfoot researchers and paranormal adventurists in the world, and is one of the OGs in the world of Sasquatch research. So hear from RON himself the incredible true story behind the recordings and about his life's work uncovering the secrets of the Sierra Sounds. And now calling in on the Necronomicast hotline, a living legend, RON Morehead. RON, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. My honor. Appreciate having me on.
I had the honor of having Mr. Bob Gimlin on a few years ago on this program, and we had a wonderful conversation about his famous film. And to have you on the program now to talk about your incredible recordings and your story and about your books and your research, what an honor and a treat. I'm really looking forward to this, sir.
Thank you. I am too.
So I entitled this episode of my show, "The Secrets of the Sierra Sounds." And I like that because there's some alliteration on there, Secrets of the Sierra Sounds. But really, your evidence that you captured those many years ago in the 1970s with your hunting buddies and your comrades there in the Sierra Mountains, the Sierra Nevada mountains of California, just really stand out just as much, I think, as the Patterson-Gimlin film in terms of remarkable evidence to the mystery of Sasquatch, Bigfoot, whatever you want to call it. Did you know at that time that you...
No, I didn't. I had no idea.
When you were dragging a tape recorder up into these mountains and you guys were trying to document this incredible phenomenon, did you have any inkling that 50 years later that people would still be talking about this evidence that you captured?
No idea whatsoever. We didn't know what we were dealing with up there, and we just looking for the ape that might be, and left big 5-toed footprints, which didn't look like an ape prints at all. The sounds they were making certainly wasn't an ape. So we didn't know. We were just until we invited Alan Berry in. He's a reporter. We took him a year after he started, which was 71. We took him in 72. He started he was a master's in science. He was actually looking for a hoax. He couldn't believe it was happening. He'd received message down from Ivan Sanderson, and Ivan Sanderson sent it to his cryptozoologist back east. He's passed away now. But he sent it to Peter Byrne. Peter Byrne thinking the same thing. It was probably somebody pulling their leg. But he called up Alan Berry, who working in Reading at the time, and as a reporter for a newspaper, actually investigated. So he came down, and we invited him down, and he talked to us each individually. And he didn't know this till later on when I was reading the documents between all these guys, and didn't know they were all looking, thinking we was hoaxing them. Because no, this doesn't happen, like Peter says, if you see one more than once in a lifetime, you're just like hit by lightning twice. So anyway, that's kind of how the rundown. We got him up there in 72, and he started experiencing. He was still, we walk out and go on a day pack or something. He'd stay back and look for signs of who could be doing this. We're 8 miles in the wilderness and 8,400 feet in elevation. You can only be there in the summertime, and just amazing adventure. And again, I had no idea at the time how it would become 50 years later. And I'm enjoying it, though. I get out and talk to people and do these conventions and these podcasts like this, and it's fun because I think it's probably the smaller part, the interaction we had. It's a big deal to the Bigfoot researchers, but to me, 50 years later, it's just led me into what were they, how they do what they did, and the enigmas associated with it just took me into just researching. So I've been doing that for 50 years and over 50 years. And I was 29 when it started, and been fun.
I bet. Bigfoot in popular culture now, we see the silhouette from the famous Patterson-Gimlin film. We see it on everything from T-shirts to bumper stickers to beer is marketed with the Sasquatch on there. So there's always this visual side of Bigfoot, and everybody thinks, the skunk ape, the giant tall creature covered in hair, not fur, with giant long strides, its arms moving like this, swaying back and forth. But one thing the Patterson-Gimlin film does not have is sound. We don't hear the forest, the sound of the forest, the ambiance of the creatures out there. And when I first heard the Sierra sounds, I don't even remember when that was. It was years ago. But when I first heard it, I saw it on a record, Al Berry's record that he put out.
Yeah, you got one of those?
Yeah, I don't have one. I'm looking all the time on eBay.
I've got one. One's all I got.
Right. I've been looking for it forever. It never comes up. But you guys captured the sounds of Bigfoot. I for years pictured or tried to imagine in my mind what this giant creature would sound like. And you hear things about infrasound, and you hear about growls and grunts and wood knocks. But what I heard coming from the speakers when I first heard these sounds, it seemed so peculiar to me. Just the samurai, it's been described as quality of the sound, but it's this own distinct language. And it's so fascinating to read your book, especially Voices in the Wilderness. We'll get to Quantum Bigfoot later, but reading about how you guys went up with these tape recorders, and this is 19, like you said, 71, 72, after your friends, the Johnson brothers, have been going to their hunting spot for years and kind of encountering these things.
Oh, they actually started in 58, but they had not encountered them until 71.
Oh, okay.
They other things they had happened, but they just put it off as a bear. Bigfoot was not on their radar at all.
Right.
And it just happened one night when they left some food out, and one of them, they think it tipped over some tea or something, or Brent tried to drink some tea, hot tea, because we have a stove up there that got reassembled after we took it in on mules. But anyway, it started for them in 71, and then they came out and told the other hunters, which there was 5 of them all together, and one guy, they all wanted to go back up and see if it was still around, so they did go back up and experience it again. And one of the guys got just freaked out. He just shot off that mountain the next morning so he could see his way out. And it was pretty spooky. Those first sounds were pretty intimidating. And a very religious guy, and he didn't know where to put that in his paradigm. Anyway, he came out, and the guys didn't come out when they were supposed to. So I was friends with them all, but I wasn't a hunter at the time, so I didn't have no reason to go up there. And he asked, Wise wanted him to go back and see if the guys got eaten or what's going on. There's some kind of monster up there. And he wouldn't go back by himself. So I agreed to go with him. And that's how I got involved with the group, because then I figured out where it was, where the camp was. And anyway, I was friends with them, so they just invited me. So I started hunting after that and started experiencing myself. And we all started taking little cassette tape recorders up there. And that's what we used in those days.
So now your friend that got spooked, was that Bill?
No, Bill. No, I just talked to him a day or two ago. No, he didn't get spooked at all. No, Bill is my partner in the packing stuff into the horses and mules. We were the wranglers, I guess you call us.
I'm not an outdoorsman so much. I mean, I like going out in the outdoors, and I love vacationing out in Colorado and places like that. But like, I'm not like a big camper. I enjoy fishing and stuff. So I would be totally out of my element if I went up 8 miles hiking off the nearest trail or wherever you deposited your vehicles or however you got there. But
right.
8 miles on rugged terrain to a very remote location. So I could just imagine Al Berry going out there later and thinking, if this is a hoax,
yeah, who could pull this off way up here?
This is some hoax. You're not just going to some weekend spot, just off
that's
the
how
beaten path.
David Paulides, I thought the same thing. I took him up there in 2018, and he said it'd be ludicrous for someone to think you could hoax this way up here. We're middle of nowhere, They'd have to know when you're coming up there. They'd have to anyway. All these things were looked into, and after 50 some odd years, no one's been able to debunk these because they're not debunkable. We've had science look at them. That's the big deal. Dr. Curlin's University of Wyoming established there wasn't any messing around with them. There were no 60-cycle hum. They would record it in a pre-recorder or something like that. It speeds up, slowed down. Not like that happened. But the big deal is also when Scott Nelson, cryptolinguist, got a hold of them and said there is an actual complex language within these sounds. And we kind of knew they were talking to each other, but I didn't realize how significant language was until I started getting into it then. And only humans, according to Dr. Lieberman at Brown University, have the local mechanism for cognitive language like we're doing right now. All animals communicate, but not like we do with sapiens. And it's just... It's gotten to where they're, in my mind, I put the dots together that they have a human component. If they have a complex language and only humans have that ability, and if Dr. Lieberman's right, and he was a cognitive primate researcher at Brown University for all his life. He just passed away last year. But he was the top guy that Al went to start with to see if he could get the Al Berry, to see if he could get the tapes analyzed and checked out just to see if there's anything funny going on with them. And, of course, Lieberman thought he was just a disgruntled student trying to get back at him with a hoax or something. And he wouldn't listen to it. And he went to another professor in Washington trying to do the same thing. They all thought he was just, messing with them because they're all in a paradigm, the classical paradigm of only primates, only humans can talk. And if they hear these things, well, nah, come on. It wasn't until they got a hold of Dr. Curlin and just took him seriously and said, okay, I'll check it out. And he did. Then you got the cryptolinguist checked it out, and I had other experts listen to it too. And it's a complex language.
Sure.
And that's human.
And now my background is I'm a musician. So I've done plenty of recordings in a recording studio, both on tape and now digitally using computer software. So I want to take the listeners that might think this is, they're still on the fence about this. Let's take it back to 1970s. And you're using like the little, just regular cassette tapes on a cassette recorder, right? With the microphone attached?
Right.
Okay. So there's no such thing as cassette tape like multi-track recording. 4 tracks were invented, but it's very easy to determine that this was not layered multi-track recording. It's very easy for people to go, like you said, Dr. Curlin over at University of Wyoming, to take these tapes and analyze them. And this wasn't done in a studio. This wasn't done with any kind of trickery. He couldn't find out anything like that. As it's presented, as you gave these tapes and had them in good faith analyzed, the results came back and they're like, yeah, this is, the frequency of the voice, the vocal patterns went above and beyond human capabilities, both how low, how high it goes, and how fast they go between. It's impossible for a human voice to do what's on these tapes. And there was zero sign of any kind of manipulation of the device at all. I think it's very important for my listeners who might think, well, heck, I'm a terrible singer, but they can make me sound like Pavarotti nowadays,
Well, these things range way up above what humans can do.
Yeah.
And according to Dr. Curlin, compared to the human vocal mechanism, this one little bit that he checked, as compared to it, it would have represented an animal 8 foot tall. So that's, just way outside the human range. But they can also speak within the human range. They can, and below. And I kind of suspect they can go into infrasound and ultrasound. I mean, I think they have such a complex vocal mechanism that it's just very expansive. And according to Nancy Logan, she was a human sound expert that listened to them years ago too. She said they have a range that's just no telling. If we weren't recording infrasound or ultrasound, nothing like that. We just had regular cassette tape recorders. And that's all Al had too. I know some people think you hauled a big tape recorder up there, but everything had to be battery operated,
Sure.
And you just put it in your saddlebag and go.
I know exactly. I have, when I was a kid, I had those handheld tape recorders all the time. Just because that's what was available when I was a kid in the late 70s, early 80s. So I had something very similar. So I think it's just important for me also just to understand. So you take the tape recorder after going up there and we're going to have to document this. Now, of course, you've got cameras too, but we're talking pitch black, 8 miles, deep hiking. When it's dark out, it is dark out. There is nothing but moonlight and starlight.
Right, 8,400 feet, moonlight and starlight, by the way, could be pretty bright.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good for me to know.
Through the trees, yeah.
Yeah. So how did you take the tape recorder and where did you place it?
Well, it depends on which one you listen to. I've got several different tapes, different times you set your mind. I usually stuck mine in the wall. We had this old makeshift shelter, which a group of trees that grew in a circle, and we learned deadfall up there, and that was kind of what we went in. I had another log put between two of the trees, wedged between two trees for a doorway, and that's what we stayed in when these things would start making the sounds outside. As soon as you go outside, well, they would stop. And you couldn't see because it's dark, and it just that's what we did. And our tape recorder on those real clear sounds, Al Berry had done at the University of Wyoming. That was remoted probably about 40 feet up with a wire up to a little sibling pine just behind maybe 30, 40 feet behind the shelter. And he had going into his tape recorder inside the shelter, and we just laid down our sleeping bags and that's the way it went. And sometimes they're always trying to get you to look at them though, because we found out after a few times these things aren't crashing in and killing us. They're not eating us. So let's see what's going on here. So, and of course he was an investigative reporter anyway, so he was really trying to get a handle on it. He passed away in 2012. We became good friends.
When you are, for the very first time, take me back, because people ask me to do weird things all the time, go investigate ghosts or go to graveyards or haunted theaters and things like that. But when somebody asks you or tells you, we're going to go do this, we're going to go out and take this exhaustive hike. And in your book, you talk about riding this horse and the physical nature of riding a horse on rugged terrain for that long. I mean, you must have think, what are we doing? what are we doing out here?
It was exciting.
Yeah. I could.
I was 29, and you can't hurt somebody who's 29 years old.
Right. Okay. So, but all right, you're laying out there at night, and you're hearing these things. You're experiencing these things, and I know you took firearms with you just in case.
Yeah. Well, we had firearms. It was a hunting camp.
Sure.
None of us went up there without guns.
Well, we're laying there at night and we're listening to what we think might be monsters with your guns in hand, and you're hearing these things. Paralyzed with fear a little bit?
Well, you got some kind of security feeling with the guns.
Yeah.
I had 44 Magnum. There was a couple of them 7mm Magnums. And, had this thing came in, any of them would have crashed through those walls. We would have been shooting them for sure. But we didn't get threatened that way. I mean, they didn't break in there. So, and we were inside the shelter, so you didn't get to see them. And of course, one of the Johnson brothers did see one through the cracks of the wall one night, and he got a pretty good look at it through the wall there. And he says it was between 8 and 10 foot tall. And anyway, the track that one left was 19 inches. So that's gives you an idea of how big they are. The tracks as high as they leave. And we've had a lot of tracks up there, and the tracks are a little different than the Patterson tracks. You know, they're all splayed. This went on with us from 71, 72, 73, 74, all the way into 76 before it really stopped. And I think it stopped because we shot a bear in camp that was molesting our stove and messing with everything. So, and we were kind of forced to shoot him. So anyway, the next day we skinned him and ate him. That sounds pretty bad, I guess, but a little freaky. And I kind of wish we didn't have to have done that, but we did. And that's when the close in stuff kind of stopped until 2011 when I was up there. And that's when I had an encounter. And it was right close to me.
When I read different books, having theories about Sasquatch, Bigfoot, and books like John Green's book, Apes Among Us, and David Paulides, you mentioned him. He's got some great books, Hoopa Project, and what's the other one up on my Tribal Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that comes out all the time, and reason I asked is you were talking about the bear getting shot. A lot of times people think that Bigfoot is just naturally curious of us hairless beings going up into their neck of the woods, so to speak. And they're curious of us. They're curious of our sounds, our food. And when you had to shoot a bear, I wonder, like you said, if that scared them off, or it kind of turned them off, or it kind of pushed them away from being that close to you guys.
Yeah, because they were trusting us once they knew we wasn't going to shoot at them. And we did have no intention to do that. You know, it just wasn't part of our game plan unless were threatened or something. And we do feel like there's a family group up there. There was a male and a female, according to the science we've had done on it. They said that's a male voice, that's a female voice. And there's also an adolescent voice comes in up there. So, you know, you don't know what they're thinking, but still we know what we're thinking. Yeah, we're blast our way out of here if we have to. We're laying there. But again, after the first few times, you realize this bark's bigger than their bite. They're not going to come and get you. So that's when we started getting bold and jumping out there, trying to get a look at them. And it wasn't until 74 when I got the interaction thing going. They started actually interacting with us, me and Bill McDowell, when we were up there, came in early with our horses, bringing supplies, and they started messing with us while we were outside the shelter. And that was first, really, they really got that bold. And I was trying to say something, I don't know what, but you can tell by the inflection that it was a question. And I started responding to them in a mimic type way. I was mimicking them. And the cryptolinguist says that he thought the same voice mechanism was doing the same sounds in 74 that was communicating with me that was in 71, 72. And but he thought they were slowing their vocalizations down to something possibly that I could understand. And I wasn't thinking, you know, maybe I'm supposed to understand what they're saying or something like that. I thought they were, whatever they're saying, I couldn't, you know, people could hear it on my tapes. But anyway, it was an exciting night. That was in 74. That's the night I got to see one. And that's the night the Samurai Cry happened. And that's what I saw. That was the first time coming for me, because as much as we was up there, as much as they were around, you don't get to see them that much. I guarantee you that. So now I've gotten into some different science, which I think you want to talk about a little bit, but how they do what they do.
Oh yeah, we mentioned infrasound just a second ago too, but I wanted to kind of touch on that. Like it's been, I've read that tigers can hunt with infrasound.
Yeah.
Seems like they temporarily paralyze their prey. Did you ever feel like when they're, I mean, you obviously can't understand what they're saying. Could you understand maybe their intent when they're making these sounds? Did you feel like they were talking to you, or were they talking about you, or were they?
They were talking to me.
Yeah.
Because there was a definite question come out. Well, you can hear that right on the tapes. In my tapes, you can hear them asking something. And I just mimicked back and just doing that stuff. But that's not a C1. That was exciting. And Matt Moneymaker, actually, the BFRO.org, he's the one that coined that. He came up and heard the sounds in 95, I think it was, just before he started BFRO. And he said, it sounds like a samurai cry. So he put that on his website. And that's how Scott Nelson, the cryptolinguist, actually got a hold of me and the other guys. And he said, I heard language, not in the Samurai cry, but in the other chatter that was going on. He says, because that's what he was trained for in the military. Two-time graduate of the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California, and vetted. I vetted guy, and he's more than qualified, according to his teachers, to do more than to do that much, which is transcribe a language in these things. And so
people from the Navy, cryptolinguists, listening to this, and they're saying, we can determine that there is a spoken language of some sort on these tapes.
Yeah.
And then it reminds me of a quote from Jane Goodall too, like before we get into the high strangeness, but Jane Goodall, she says, you'd be amazed when I tell you that she's sure that Sasquatch exists just through the centuries of sightings and eyewitness accounts and how it's embedded in Native American and all kinds of folklore, stories for generations and centuries.
I got a hold of Jane years ago, and she hand wrote me a letter back. Very nice. I still got that letter. Yeah, laminated it for my filing. Yeah, she's a nice person.
So you were in the forest,
Okay.
and so we'll touch into some high strangeness, like all these things, and they're out there. Whether you can see them. Wait, before I ask that, did you ever smell them? Did you ever have that stereotypical scent? That's
not the smell that most people claim. You don't know. I never had a foul up there. Of course, maybe we had the clean ones up there. I don't know. Or maybe, I got to tell you, I say this very bluntly.
Yeah.
They're not all the same. These things aren't like you've seen the one in the Patterson film, the ones that you hear about. And I've been in Nepal, I've been into South America, I've been all over the world, really looking at these things, and they're all identified differently. And I think they're just different types because I think, well, first of all, I believe in aliens like everybody should if they don't. They've been here, they've been manipulating with higher technology than what we have. They've been manipulating DNA of different species. And I think they've done that to a troglodyte. I think these things may have been here longer than the human species. And they've either evolved further or no more, or they were given the attribute for something different than what we got, which was their vocal mechanism. And we're getting the high strangeness when you ask me a question about that.
Oh, I'm fine with that. And stories of high strangeness. I remember doing some reading. I read, and so much of it's like late at night. So I was reading about, I think there was some news article from 1888 where these groups of ranchers and Native Americans, they described what they saw: a small moon come down from the night sky and three
crazy bears jumped out of it.
Yeah, that's the wording. 3 crazy bears jumped out of it.
I used that. That was a Huffington Post, a 2012 article. Yeah.
Right. That's probably the one I saw. But I'm thinking, like, all these things, I always look for these connections with the high strangeness and like ghosts and monsters, UFOs, psychic connections. It's just so fascinating to me. So yeah, I'm definitely fine with talking about with those things, because like over 20% I've read of these Bigfoot encounters, Sasquatch encounters, also go hand in hand with UFO or alien phenomena too.
Right. Yeah. Well, I saw a UFO up there once, big blue ball coming down, controlled, whatever it was. I lost it behind the tree, so that's all I can say, because I didn't see green men jump out of it or nothing like that. But it was all happening when this Bigfoot stuff was happening too. So, but yeah, it's how they do what they do. Al Berry, who I like to mention a lot because he's responsible for probably me here tonight. Yeah, he says stay with science. Don't talk about the strangeness up here, because he says you won't get people to listen to you if you do. But more and more people are reporting this stuff, and I started just talking about it years ago when I go to these conferences now, and because he passed away, so he's not there with me, because he don't like getting out of science, but he's classical science. If you get into quantum science, it's a new science. It's called modern science, and it rides on the back of our three-dimensional Newtonian physics. And Newtonian physics is based on everything you can measure and predict, and it's like that. Mm-hmm. Well, quantum physics isn't like that at all. You can get a proton and a positron, and they get them they can talk to each other over long distance. It's just things are different in the quantum world. It's how our cell phones work. It's all the way from the micro world all the way through the macro world throughout the space universe, according to Dr. Christopher Breyer at West Texas A&M. He says everything operates under quantum mechanics. We just see within a three-dimensional environment that we live in, but there's more dimensions, and that's pretty much established now mathematically through quantum science. And if you get into the other dimensions, that's where, well, even religions say you're going to go to heaven when you die, you know. And you got physicists that go to church on Sunday, but they won't talk about God any other time. But you know, there's other things going on. We get the fourth dimension of time. I think that's where you see a lot of ghosts. We'll see a lot of stuff like that. And I think most of these aliens are in the fifth and sixth part of it. But we have access as human beings to all that stuff. And that's the good part. We just haven't evolved into it yet.
Well, and I just had a great conversation with parapsychologist Lloyd Auerbach, and we mostly talked about ghosts, but we also started talking about consciousness, and we talked about psychical connections and how you can have a kind of a psychical connection with somebody halfway across the globe instantaneously, and because of energy and
right, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
We're all energy, and so these things aren't as strange. Or maybe they are as strange because I'm just strange. But a lot of these things aren't as strange concepts to me now as, maybe 3, 4, or 5 years ago before I started reading about these things. But there seems to be these undeniable connections between, Bigfoot sightings, UFO, things like that.
Yeah, you couldn't even talk about that stuff years ago.
No, you couldn't.
It's from the funny farm. But anyway, nowadays, I talk about it freely. First of all, I'm old enough now where I don't care.
Right.
I'm just going to say what happened and take it or leave it. You know, that's the way it goes. But I do want to get the word out where I think it's taken me, where I think it's going, and stuff like that, because we had so many strange things happening up there, which I talk about in my first book mainly, and some in the second book, because quantum science is not the paranormal. It's not the woo-woo. Quantum science answers a lot of questions that exist in the paranormal. So for someone to call, like, you don't call Einstein a paranormal investigator. He was a scientist, you know.
Sure.
And I call myself a citizen scientist because I don't want to be considered a paranormal guy. I try to answer the questions that happen to me and that happen to so many other people through quantum physics, the laws of quantum physics. And I think I'm successful in doing that a lot. And this next book I'm writing now is going to come out with even more stuff. But it gets into, can they disappear, how to track away stop, you know, and stuff like that. Because people think everything they got going on is what they can see with their two eyes in a three-dimensional environment. And that's so wrong. There's so much more going on. There's things all around you all the time you're probably not seeing, because we only see within certain terahertz, which is 430 to 770 terahertz is our frequency we see. And as you mentioned, everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. Those three things, Tesla said, you get the secrets of those and you got the secrets of the universe. Well, good. It's fun.
I jump back and forth sometimes, and, you know, because it's fun to think about these things. I've never seen one. I've never smelled one. I've never heard one in person, you know. But when I think about these creatures out in the woods out there, are they just right there, sitting right next to us because of their superior hiding skills and the ability to be physically covert, or are they slipping in and out of dimensions? Are they energy that's yeah. It's just so interesting. Like, they could be a flesh and blood creature, or they could be this type of energy, or they could be an alien, or
they can be all of that, because they are flesh and blood. They leave tracks, they poop, they have kids, they procreate. So, you know, and they talk. They're sapient.
Yeah.
So
it's funny that you mentioned,
but nothing's just flesh and blood. We have our cognizance, our telekinesis, our telepathy, our deja vu. We have these things in us that we're coming out every once in a while, but these things seem to probably have that stuff all the time.
That's interesting that you mentioned them also, you know, being like a family unit. You know, you think of a male and a female, and there's more than one, so they must be able to reproduce. And I get books and articles and things sent to me all the time, including one researcher, or the book's around here someplace, his name's Randall Travers, but he sent a book about the reproduction habits or eyewitness accounts of Bigfoot's physically reproducing, which I guess would have to happen for them to be seen for centuries. There must be a way for them to reproduce physically on this planet, I guess.
Oh, sure. Plus, they can reproduce through indigenous people. They have 23 pairs of chromosomes. We have, most animals, primates have 24. So they would have to have 20, which also puts them in that same part human category that I was talking about earlier. They got 23 pairs of chromosomes. They could impregnate a human being. And I think that's happened, and I think that's why there's some different types, too, that are more human-like than others. Like the Patterson film, I think that was very human-like, even though it looks big and hairy. Mm-hmm. The tracks are very human-like, arched, five-toes. We had five-toed tracks, but they weren't arched quite like that. They were, I'm not sure what we were dealing with up there. It had a Bigfoot, so we've always called it a Bigfoot, but it might have just been a pure alien. I don't know if they can all talk. These things we were dealing with can talk, and no one's pulling our leg. These things, whatever they were talking in a sapient type way. And that's been established now by professionals. So anyway, it's been a long adventure for me, and it's a exciting one. I got to tell you that. I know David Paulides in that film, when I took him up there in 2018, he reproduced something my wife and I saw in 2016, which was a elongated light floating across through the trees. And we watched that for quite a while. He reproduced that really well. And you don't know what that's about other than its energy, and nothing up there surprises me. That's one time we thought our camp was being tore apart, and we look out there and nothing's changed. Well, what do you do with that? Are you listening to another universe, or what are you hearing? All of us are hearing it. Not hypnotizing all of us, are they? Or could they make those sounds with their vocal mechanism very expanded? Can they reach a frequency that would actually alter their mass and energy? Because mass and energy are interchangeable. So if your mass can change into energy, you wouldn't leave any tracks anymore, and you wouldn't appear. You would appear to disappear. Let's put it that way. So can they disappear? Dr. Paul Dirac in 1933 won the Nobel Prize for antimatter. And yes, matter and energy are interchangeable. And that's an Einstein statement, too. You find the frequency of anything and you can change its matter. So anyway, that was proven by CERN in 2012, the Hadron Collider. They got the particle crash and turned it into energy. So anyway, I get carried away like that. It's not complicated. It's just exciting to get the scientists behind it, like I was taught to do.
Well, I disagree with you, because sometimes it's really complicated to a guy like me. But I have a friend who he loves investigating high strangeness, and he really he's a gumshoe kind of investigator. He goes around to all the different places where things are seen, especially around here in the Midwest right now. His name's Steve Berg, and he wanted me to ask you a question about the co-creation aspect of Bigfoot. He was asking, simply put, if there is not a human being around to witness the Bigfoot, do they exist?
Mm-hmm. Well, no, there's no one around, but there are people around seeing them.
Well, that's what
nothing is real. Nothing is real until it's witnessed, because we have creation to us. But I believe some of them have been here, messed by aliens from eons before we were created, and other cultures have been on this planet, as we've seen now from all over the world, evidence everywhere.
Because you traveled, I was reading about you going to Peru, all over. Yeah.
Yeah, I went down there to investigate those elongated skulls a couple different times, and also megalithic structures that were down there. I was down there with two different scientists on two different trips, and they were naturally elongated, and there's no parietal suture in their head, and we have two parietals, one on each side of our head skull, and they don't have, but just one, and they're naturally that way. And started looking into that. They had 25 to 30% more brain matter, and we think they were the pre-Inca people. And I think they were the responsible parties for those megalithic structures down there, which you see above high country, above Peru, above Cusco, and a lot of those towns up there. You see a church that's built with stuff like that, just 100-ton boulders with no seams in them. They're put together like a jigsaw puzzle up on top of this 13,000-foot mountain. And man, how they do that? How they cut them so there's no mortar, there's no. Anyway, I can get off subject here, but I went down there to see if that has anything to do with the elongated skulls often reported on here on the Bigfoot, because sometimes they're reported with an elongated skull. That led me to the Bloodlock Caves, which I've been there 4 times, and investigating that. That's a Paiute said they warred with 8-foot tall cannibalistic red-haired giants, and drove them in that cave and shot them as they came out after set fire to the entrance there. I don't think they got them all. But anyway, the remains were found in 1911 when the guana miners were in there getting iguana stuff. And all that evidence has been sequestered now, put back by the Smithsonian. But you can't see it. It used to be on display in the museum there in Winnemucca, but it's not anymore. And you got the minaret skulls, which are found in Yosemite. No, that's the Martindale mummies that were found in Yosemite. And the female was 7 foot tall. And then you got the minaret skull. That's why Dr. Denton found in the minarets of Yosemite, below Yosemite in these areas there. Anyway, I've been in those places, and there's a whole history of giants on this continent that people just aren't aware of. They get taken away and redacted by our current science, our current government, so to speak, I guess, because sure. I think if the government can control it, they want to get it away. If they can't control it, they don't want. They either want to dismiss it, make fun of it, or hide it some way, because they know about this stuff. I'm sure they do.
Oh, I guarantee it. And now you touched on something. You were talking about cannibalistic giants, and you also talked about the work of David Paulides and how you work together. I saw you on that Missing 411 documentary about the hunted. Now, he doesn't ever come right out and says why there's missing people in the national parks and in these cluster areas. But he has a new documentary out about UFOs. He has the one about the hunted, the hunters. And a lot of people wonder if he's some of his research points to some kind of wild man, ape, cannibalistic, maybe we're being kidnapped. You know what I mean? So I keep thinking
you're trying to get me to tell you what he thinks.
No.
Okay.
I'm trying like hell to get him on the show, and I'm not asking you to speak for him. But just your opinion, like, do you ever think like you guys were tempting fate by going out into these woods? And I know you're armed, but when you hear these stories about people disappearing in parks, and when you even mentioned that human beings reproducing with Sasquatch because of the 23 chromosomes, it's possible. Do you ever think like, man, we could have been Albert Ostman? That's a famous case almost 100 years ago of him being kidnapped by a family of Sasquatch. I mean, do you ever think like, man, we were really tempting fate going out to these places?
Oh no, didn't bother me. I mean, I was like I say, you're not breakable at 29. But I actually went up into Toba Inlet looking for evidence of Albert Ostman's story. Flew up there in my plane and landed on a riverbed. And anyway, it's an interesting story. But that's the first report by John Green that actually talks about him chattering. He mentioned that in his interview. He was there 6 days, abductee, till he escaped. But then you got Fred Beck, who same year, he claimed he shot one at Mount St. Helen, and they couldn't find the body. And prior to that, though, they'd followed a trackway of one of these things. This is in Fred Beck's story. And he said it would had to have jumped 160 feet to have not left another track. So on his dying day, he thought they were paranormal. Well, again, paranormal, there's got to be a science behind that. It can't just be somebody's thoughts, but there is a science behind them, and that's the density, the matter, energy transfer. How they do that, I think they can. My theory is they do it through the vocal mechanism, but I could be totally wrong there. But they've got a way of doing it. I've talked to too many people, interviewed too many people that have saw them fade out, just pixelate out. It's some very credible people.
Yeah, when I think about these things, I always err on the side of generosity to the mystery. I think that there is an arrogance sometimes to science that we have everything totally figured out. And it doesn't leave room for wonder. I mean, when I think I know everything, or we think science has got everything solved, you don't leave room for exploration. You don't leave room for uncovering mysteries or for the awe of discovery. And so I love these talks. I love these conversations about these undeniable reports of Bigfoot, of Sasquatch, of skunk ape and Yeti, and all these strange monsters, Dogman, all the, I mean, we could go on and on. But yeah, just it's a strange, weird, wonderful world, and I just don't think we know near as much as we pat ourselves on the back.
We're so arrogant as a species. We're arrogant. We're warring species to start with. We got to calm down and make the planet better. But yeah, there's aliens out there. I mean, it's undeniable. And I guess you could deny anything, but you got to have your head in the sand and not think that we're the only intelligent life. And I say that sparingly, intelligent life.
Right.
Yeah.
When people tell me there's no such thing as Bigfoot, I'm like, well, what about the thousands, tens of thousands of reports for centuries? Well, there's no such thing as ghosts. What about the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands of eyewitness accounts of ghostly phenomenon? Well, there's no such thing as aliens. Well, what about the tens and hundreds of thousands of reports of eyewitnesses for centuries seeing these things, and cave hieroglyphics showing starmen and things? Such for people to say, well, there's no such thing. Well, all right, that's fine, whatever.
Well, some people got their minds made up. No, don't change their mind with facts.
Yeah, then they want to argue with me about football or baseball, like they know everything too.
I don't argue with people. I don't try to prove anything. I just say what I think, and if they don't want to ask the question, I don't want to waste my time trying to give an answer that they're not going to take anyway. So
it's kind of my life philosophy. I try on this show to do what I do in life, and that is like to have conversation, not confrontation. That's kind of like what I like to do here.
I'm the same way.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Now, you mentioned you have a new book. Now, I mentioned Voices in the Wilderness. I talked about Quantum Bigfoot. We discussed that, and all these books and your recordings of these things that we've been talking about. High quality recordings on CD are available on your website, ronmorehead.com. What's the new book that you got working on?
Well, it's a new book. I haven't got it titled yet because I think it'll take
it's that new.
I got an idea of the title, but I've written the chapters and most of them anyway. I'm still grooming it, so it's going to be out this year sometime. I try to get a lot of homework on this stuff. I've been working on this for quite a while because there's things that's coming together that just are so coming together. We're living in a really strange time, a good time to live, to see some special things we're going to see. A lot of things are going to be open to us this year, I think. Yeah. And next year.
What? Give me a hint on the subject matter of the next Ron Morehead book.
It'll be just an expansion on the Quantum Bigfoot. Okay. Pretty much. It gets more of the mysteries, like what I just told you on Paul Dirac, the guy got the Nobel Prize, antimatter, how matter and energy are interchangeable, and I get into just different subject matters. Good, bad, what makes some of them good, what makes some of them bad, how long they've been here, things I think I know. Right. I guess I just think I know. I don't know that I do.
Well, we've just been figuring out for the last 51 years. So before all this happened, before you started taking tape recorders out in the woods at night, you were a restaurateur, yeah? Yeah,
I still was then.
What was your restaurant like? What did you cook, or what was your specialty?
Well, I had several restaurants.
What was your specialty, or what was your focus?
Well, I did everything. I mean, they weren't all the same. They were up by Yosemite, and Merced and Mariposa and Yosemite close to it. It's a parkland there. So there was actually 5 restaurants all at once that I was working with. 5 different types of food. 2 of the restaurants up by Yosemite had 2 different restaurants within one building with a bar in between. So, and then I had one in Mariposa, which was a glorified coffee shop. Just whatever was needed in the place where I wanted to go to is what kind of food you should have. I went from pizza bars to fine dining on the river up there. So.
Well, what I think is important to note is that this wasn't like this Bigfoot stuff wasn't a get rich quick scheme, because you were well regarded as a successful, honest, hardworking businessman who didn't need to go out into the woods with a tape recorder and you know what I mean?
No, well, there's no money in that. I guarantee you. It cost me all the money I could make to support what I was doing in Bigfoot. Right. I had an airplane and I was a pilot, and I'd fly to these conferences on my own time, and do it.
Yeah. I'm calling you from Omaha, Nebraska. We're talking from Omaha, Nebraska. Have you been to the Harriet McFeely's Crossroads of America Bigfoot Museum?
No.
Oh, she's great. She's known here in Nebraska as the Bigfoot lady, and I know.
Harriet McFeely. Yes. I've spoken to her just 2 or 3 times.
Oh, okay, great.
She's got one going on, I think, this month or next month.
Yeah, she's got one coming up in Hastings in April. I'm going to try and make it down there for at least one of the 3 days. But what I loved about Harriet is that all her life, before she started her Bigfoot museum, people, she wanted to or work in a museum, and women at that age, at that time, weren't encouraged to go into the sciences. And so I just wanted to make sure that you had heard of her, because her story.
Oh, she's a sweet little lady.
I love Harriet, and I hope she's listening to this right now. Because,
before she ever started a museum, she used to go to, I was speaking down in Oklahoma at Anobi. And she's sitting right in the front row, and I've seen her a couple of times when I was down there, and just asked me questions, and she looked like she was going to do something. She did. She opened up her own museum,
and it's great. I took my family there this past year. I had her on my show just to talk about that. You can jump into this at any time. The mystery is always there, and it's available for anybody the invitation's there to jump into this mystery and try and figure it out for yourself.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Well, Ron, I've had just an absolute pleasure. Like I said at the beginning of the show, along with the Patterson-Gimlin film, your work with the Sierra Sounds, these remarkable recordings that were made over 50 years ago that people can still listen to now. And believe it or not, I believe them. I think we're listening to the chatter of some kind of strange creature out there in the woods. And I thank you for your honesty. I thank you for your bravery 50 years ago. And I also just want to thank you for your generosity of time tonight.
Can I say one thing at the end here?
You could say whatever you want to say.
Another minute.
Oh yeah, talk.
Where this has taken me is all I want to say. It's taken me to trying to understand who we are as humans and how special we are as humans. I think we were. That's why they don't interfere with us. Can they mind speak? Yeah, if they get on your frequency, you can think they are. But I don't know. Too analytical. I don't know if they were trying to mind speak. That's why they was talking to me slowly, so I can maybe understand them. So, but who we are as humans is very important to this whole conversation. These things, if they are part human, and I believe they are, which we're all hybridized. I think some kind of alien god, or whatever you want to call him, created us. Mm-hmm. And if it's a him, I get into the cuneiform text way back in the back, and every time God is mentioned in there, it's Elim, and that is always in the plural form. And it's called the sky people, the shiny people. Even Satan was called the shiny one. I'm saying that there's a lot more going on than what we see with our eyes. You got to open your mind up and work like a parachute, let it open so you can absorb what's really happening around you. Learn how to be in yourself, you balance yourself, get your pineal gland, which is your receptor, connected to your heart. Your heart and your brain has to be in coherence. Then they all work in rhythm, and things can happen for you. And once you raise your personal vibrational frequency, it takes you higher and higher and higher, and you won't get sick. When you do get out of this, if you treat everybody with love and compassion, like the masters have taught us, we will all increase in the evolution that we're supposed to. There's more going on, but I could talk for an hour on this. So it's fun. I guess I did, didn't I?
Ron, what I love about this, and please take this as a compliment, at 80 years old, I love the fact that your mind is so open. You're not one of these stereotypical older guys, that are like, that's you're out there, you're investigating, you're full of life, and you're full of wonder. And I think that is an inspiration that we can all take from listening to a conversation with Ron Morehead, for sure.
Thank you, Brian.
You bet. Everybody, it's been my pleasure to welcome a living legend, the great Ron Morehead, on this episode of Necronomicast.
Take care.
There we go, everybody. The legendary Ron Morehead and the secrets of the Sierra Sounds. I worked long and hard to get Ron on the program. He's pretty selective of who he talks to and what he talks about. But having him on the program, what a treat. Man, one of the living legends in Bigfoot cryptozoology, exploration. Love it. Thank you, Ron. Next up on episode 247, another OG of the paranormal world. This time, Lloyd Auerbach, the paranormal professor. You have seen Lloyd on shows like Sightings, Ghost Adventures, In Search of, Unsolved Mysteries, The Oprah Winfrey Show, Larry King Live, The View, The Today Show, Late Night with David Letterman, Sports Center, and now Necronomicast. So excited to bring Lloyd to you, faithful listeners. I pretty much got the guests for the entire year booked in one way or another. Bringing you hits. Bringing you the hits all year long on Necronomicast. And it's my pleasure to do so. So thank you for listening. Thank you for leaving reviews. Thank you for leaving ratings. It's very much appreciated. Thank you, and good night. Go get some sleep.